Hello and welcome to this PTC webinar. Now allow me to introduce today's speakers. Jim Brown is President of TechLara, and he is joined by Marinko Lasagna, Director of Engineering Systems at Gentherm, and Graham Birch, Senior Director of PLM Solutions with PTC. And with that, I'll hand things over to Jim. Jim?
Great. Thank you very much, Kim, and thanks for the opportunity to discuss bills of material today. Today we're going to talk about selecting the right PLM software for bill of material management based on some recent research that we've conducted and some real-world experience from Gentherm and some broad experience from PTC. We'll start with some introductions. I'm going to share a little bit about the research that I'm basing my conversation from. And then we'll talk about bills of material as the digital product backbone, not just what we've seen bills of material for today, which is really being the communication and collaboration mechanism across the enterprise for products, but really even moving further forward in the digital world. We'll share some recommendations, and then we'll talk about the considerations that companies should have as they're looking for a solution to support their bills of material. So TechLara, just a brief introduction of who we are. Our goal is to make the business value of technology clear. We find that very often companies understand the software, they understand their business, but they don't understand the mapping between the two. So we're an independent research firm. We do a lot of research, both interviews as well as survey-based research. And the idea is to understand for topics like PLM, what companies are doing that's really helping to drive their business forward and help them compete. So in terms of my introduction, Jim Brown, not the Hall of Fame football player, James Brown, Godfather of Soul, but I have an industry background with General Electric. I've spent time implementing enterprise-level systems with Accenture or Anderson Consulting, as it was at the time. I've been in the software industry for enterprise and supply chain type solutions, and for about the last 15 years, I've been an industry analyst, really a researcher trying to understand, again, how PLM and digital enterprise approaches are helping drive better business performance. Really fortunate to be joined today by two speakers. I'm going to start with Marinko Lasagna from Gentherm, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and let you introduce yourself, Marinko. If you can just do us a favor and maybe tell people a little bit about Gentherm, and then talk about what your responsibilities there are.
Yeah, Marinko Lasagna, I'm the Director of Engineering Systems. Gentherm is primarily an automotive company. We do a lot of technology products, from simple things such as automotive seat heaters up to battery cooling systems for hybrid vehicles, and moving into even electronics and battery power packs as well. So we have quite a diverse product, with quite a bit of diverse situations that we need to be able to address.
Fantastic. And tell us a little bit about what your role is then.
So my role, Director of Engineering Systems, I'm responsible from the business user side to put PLM into our facilities and into our environment, looking at not just from an engineering, but from what PLM really is, right from the start of documents through the projects, through the engineering development, through CAD, all the way down to the shop floor and eventually even IoT. So we are looking at a very all-encompassing implementation over the next few years.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Marinko. And I'm also joined by Graham Birch from PTC, Senior Director of Solution Management. And if I can, I'll ask the same thing. Maybe, Graham, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your responsibilities at PTC, and then give everybody a little bit of an idea how long you've been working with this thing we love and call PLM.
Yeah, hi, Jim. It's good to be here this afternoon and joining you on the webcast. I'm looking forward to some good discussion. My name is Graham Birch. I work for PTC back here at the PTC headquarters. I'm a part of the PLM segment and the product management team. I'm responsible for core Windchill, so that really means things like change management, parts management, bill of material management, configuration management, and collaboration. I'd love to tell you how long I've been around this thing called PLM, but it's going to age me very rapidly if I do that. I've been with PTC for 25 years, and actually more than 25 years, and the bulk of that time has really been working on what we used to call PDM, and has now evolved into the more complex and comprehensive system that we now call PLM.
Fantastic. Well, I'm honored to be presenting with the two of you. I think we've got a fantastic group today. I'm going to be speaking some from our research at TechLara. The one report that you see here is our Bill of Material Management Buyer's Guide. That really is a way for companies to understand the selection criteria they should be looking for as they're identifying how they're going to support bills of material. But I'll also be touching on some other research reports based on looking at 5 dimensions of product complexity, and our research spanning everything from engineering data management, CAD data management, all the way through up through more advanced PLM systems and digitalization. So you'll hear me reference that as we go along. To set the stage a little bit, I want to talk about digitalization and the fact that manufacturing is really digitalizing pretty significantly, and we believe at TechLara that there are going to be some real changes in the market, winners and losers, based on their companies' abilities to innovate. And there's been some great research on that. Some great articles recently in Harvard Business Review. This graphic is actually from McKinsey Company, and shows a lot of the benefits and the value drivers of digitalization. And whether it's called Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, or goes by another name, I think it's key to understand that the ability for companies to very quickly innovate, tailor products to market in a very nimble, agile way, but do so with quality, is fundamentally changing. And the digital nature and the digital continuity that is being developed with today's approaches and systems is really making a fundamental difference. So I think that it's important to think about bills of material in that context, and we'll definitely be hitting on that more. But at the same time, I also don't want to lose fact of as we're looking at moving forward with digitalization, there's so much that can be done that will transform businesses. If you think about what people are doing with a digital twin, where they've got a cohesive, digital model of the product that is working alongside and with the physical product itself and exchanging information, so that instead of just having a static model of a product, we now can actually start to see what's happening, what the real experience of the product is in the field, what real uses are, what real pressures are, what real vibration is, as opposed to engineering assumptions, and really having this tight connection between the two, and a cohesive digital thread, so we understand everything that's happened, and we can take a product from its requirements all the way through its service life cycle in a way that's connected, and we're not disrupting and translating information from one step to the other. Not only because it's more efficient to design, develop, and maintain the product, but also because then when you go to reuse that, you've got all of that rich information to apply to the next generation of the product. The key is that the bill of material is really the backbone of the digital manufacturing enterprise. If you think about the way we've used the bill of material to communicate product information across the business and even into the supply chain or value chain with contract manufacturers and other partners, that's been important, and we've used it to collaborate. But in this digital model where we're moving much more quickly, we're taking designs from step to step and building on them digitally, really it's taking on an even more significant role. So having said that, I think it's important to see this view of bills of material as the strategic backbone to the digital product and supporting digital twins, et cetera. But I also don't want to lose touch with the fact that today in people's businesses there are a lot of bill of material challenges that show up in everyday operational results in manufacturing and procurement across the business. And you may recognize some of these in your own business. And whether it's an operational thing in this word cloud, you see slow review and approval processes, or if it's mistakes like scrap and rework and errors in manufacturing, ordering the wrong part. There are a lot of very tactical day-to-day problems that drive excess costs, that drive late orders, that are linked back in the end to not having a solid bill of material, a trusted process, and a real good understanding of what's happening with your product structures overall. So, with that, I want to start to bring in the other speakers as well. So, Marinko, if I can maybe start with you. Can you tell us a little bit, how is Gentherm managed bills of material? Is it consistent across the business, and have you seen any of these kinds of issues?
Yeah, we have a fairly consistent bill of material process in our company. One BOM to kind of fit everything, which we happen to call a Franken BOM because it's trying to do too many things for everybody. So it really doesn't do everything for everybody's type thing. And we find that we end up having to sacrifice things because of this bill of material structure that we have today, where we can't have the purchasing group needing a BOM that the way they need to see it versus what the manufacturing guy needs versus what the the actual design engineer does. So this leads to a lot of issues for us. The other thing too that we see is we don't have the full CAD integration that comes with a lot of the newer tools, which we're bringing in now with Windchill, which is a huge advantage from a reuse perspective and the visualization. It really helps drive a lot of solutions for those issues.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that integration is key to a lot of companies that I talk to. Graham, if I could ask you, what bill of material related challenges have you seen at the companies that you've worked with? I know you've got a broad experience.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I think so. The bill of material is critical, right? It's a critical piece of documentation. It's a recipe for the product. It's the contract, if you would, between design and many of the downstream functions. And when this goes wrong, it can go badly wrong. And the kind of things you see, the symptoms will be things like inefficiency, where people are searching around for the latest information. We often see this when people use spreadsheets a lot to manage their the bills of material, and we find people looking, well, do I have the latest copy or do I not? So they don't have confidence in the information that they're seeing. And then secondly, in terms of errors, so they're getting either wrong or outdated or incomplete information that really manifests itself in the wrong parts being ordered or a high amount of scrap and rework.
Yeah, absolutely. And Graham, I love the confidence thing, because I think one of the things that you find is that companies that don't have that confidence, can't trust their data, find themselves either making mistakes or compensating for the fact that they're not sure they have the right information by checking and double checking and rechecking and driving down their efficiency pretty significantly. And that actually brings me to the status quo. The status quo for managing bills of material today is simply just too much wasted time. In our research, what we find is that an average engineer spends about half of their time on innovation and design, and a lot of other time, the other half of their time on non-value-added work and administrative types of things. And bills of material have a lot to do with that. We see companies with CAD-centric, drawing-centric bills of material, that are organized simply in the way that it makes sense to build the CAD geometry and the CAD assembly. And then, you mentioned, Graham, the spreadsheets, and I'm sure we've all seen the multicolor indented spreadsheets that are really intended to show BOMs, and they're just error prone. They're not enterprise level tools. They're not intended to really communicate that kind of information and collaborate on it. And they're not visual. Engineers and the people that we work with around the business like to see products. They like to see them alive and in something other than a textual list. And we see lots of ad hoc management of it as well. So the status quo is not good. But I think the other thing that we're seeing is something we call the 5 dimensions of product complexity. We're seeing this problem becoming more and more of an issue with bills of material as products get more complex. And we look at it in 5 different areas. The mechanics and the materials that companies are using for products are starting to get more complex, whether it's miniaturization or the use of composites. But we're also seeing other changes that are not even necessarily directly related to the product, but to the globalization of design and manufacturing and the environment that it takes to bring a product to market. We're seeing new delivery mechanisms in manufacturing and manufacturing techniques like additive 3D printing, trying to design products for global markets and have one product launch that meets all of the needs. But then also, I think one of the most profound things, and tied back to digitalization, is systems-oriented, what I know PTC likes to call smart connected products, that really drive a new level of capability in products. They're doing new things. They're connecting to each other in systems of systems. But the level of complexity that creates, particularly when you start moving into the IoT, is really driving some very tangible increased challenges for companies. So, with that, Mariko, let me turn to you. I mean, maybe you can share, how has complexity changed at Gentherm?
Well, that's a really good topic for us. We started many, many years ago making simple seat heaters. And now when we look at the electronics, the mechatronic parts, we're doing the battery systems. You have product now that has, electronics. It has software. We're doing design and development in multiple CAD tools, CATIA, NX, AutoCAD, SolidWorks, Creo. When you have that complexity of design, the complexity of product, having a BOM with that capability to handle everything of that nature and the systems to handle that, and also with multiple facilities in multiple countries, it becomes very important that you can really have that one source of truth for everything, to even get to anywhere near to getting to the IoT and some of the digital twin that industry is focusing on. Very, very difficult challenge without the proper tools.
Yeah, no doubt. And Graham, do you want to add anything on how this complexity is going to impact companies, and particularly those with less mature bill of material management processes?
Yeah, I think when I think of bill of material, I think of it as being a communication vehicle, right? How you communicate information down the food chain. And one of the aspects of complexity is the products are certainly becoming more complex, but so are the product teams, the design teams. I can think of listening to one of my customers recently. They make high-quality hi-fi, and that used to be a black box with loads of dials and buttons on the front. And the latest one was a black box with basically an on-off switch, because all of the functionality you could access through an app on your phone. So now the system has moved from on-board to off-board onto the phone. And not only that, it was there were some aspects of the functionality, for example, listening to streaming music stations or webcast radio stations. That was all moved into the cloud, and you could save favorites and so on. So the impact from the product design team was that, wow, IT is now part of the product design team. and we haven't really considered that before. Previously they were really there as a service, and now they're peers in designing products. So, absolutely, the products are becoming more complex, the teams are becoming more comprehensive, and that's not even to mention supply chain, which adds another dimension of complexity to the team. So communication is key, and the bill of material is one of the fundamental ways in which we achieve that communication.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. As we move on to some recommendations, we talked about some of the challenges. We talked about some of the ways that bills of material are important communication and collaboration mechanisms. As we see companies moving forward into the digital world, we really are recommending to companies to make this shift from document-centric to digital bills of material to meet the challenges we already talked about, but really to start including more and more information in their bill of material to make it a more cohesive view of their products, and then to sort of leverage those bill of material and support them with very mature bill of material processes, because it's obviously not just about the data and the information in the system, but also about the processes that are associated with it. If I can, I'm going to turn back to Marinko again, and maybe you can let us know a little bit about what led your company to adopt a new solution for bill of material management. In fact, one of the companies in manufacturer in the report that we interviewed for the report said that it was really a global where used was the biggest driver for a solid bill of material. But what was the case for Gentherm to adopt a new solution for BOMs?
So we have a current solution that we've been using for 10 or 12 years, but it's basically just a simple PDM tool. It's nothing more than Excel BOMs is the way I look at it. The getting to something where we have the visualization of the product, where multiple people can use the BOM for what they need it from, which is the same data, just I'd say different sides of the box, and really being able to reuse the product that's in the BOM and move it forward to the next one and make the slight changes, because we do that a lot with our products, and most industries do. Moving to Windchill gave us the ability to have all those different options and availabilities without really tearing up much of what we've done to date. So it gives us really a good ability to build on what we have to date and move forward with adding the visualization, which is really a significant improvement for us as an organization.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. As we looked at what companies were looking for from a bill of material solution and what were the most important criteria in the buyer's guide, we broke it down into a number of different areas. Obviously, functionality, software requirements is very important, and we actually broke it down into 6 different areas of functionality: creating and developing bills of material, managing revisions, configurations, and change, visualizing the bills of material, creating associations and associating different information with it, transforming the bills of material, for example, from engineering BOMs to manufacturing BOMs to service BOMs. And then also one of the key things that is important is being able to report and analyze and document what the product consists of. So those are the areas we looked at from a requirements perspective. And we're going to go into a few of those in more detail in just a minute. But I think it's important to just step back and understand that there's more to it than just the software. It's important to have the right capabilities in place for implementation, for integration, particularly with CAD and with other systems, but then also for adoption and to make sure that people have processes that they are comfortable with and they understand, and ongoing support. And then vendor requirements. The considerations for a vendor are important. Things are changing extremely quickly right now, and having the right partner is extremely important. And then in the report, we go into some special considerations based on industry or people that have to order products, and also some more insights on moving to the digital enterprise. We're seeing more and more the adoption of IoT and augmented reality, virtual reality. So many things happening in digitalization that the bill of material has to support, as well as the vendor of choice. So we touch on that in the report as well. But as we talk about selection, Marinko, can you tell us a little bit about the selection process you went through at Gentherm for PLM?
Yeah, we did a different approach. The standard, hey, build a requirements list and tell the supplier what button we want to do, what color was not what we did. We looked at all of our use cases and really started looking at the things that drive work, the things that drive unplanned work, where the issues come from. And we basically established a smaller criteria of, say, 50 or 60 significant items that drive 80% of the work, and gave that to our different suppliers in a proof of concept. Gave everybody the same data with a few weeks' notice, and let them run a proof of concept. Come in and tell us, hey, how does the engineer's life, how do we do product development the day in the life of? And that's where, PTC came in and really gave us several hours of detailed presentations of how the system really works. And that's what we wanted. We don't want to build a system full of customizations. We're trying to build something with no customization so we can take advantage of the constant available updates and upgrades that come along with any of these PLM solutions.
Yeah, I was really impressed, Marinko, as we've been talking about the fact that it was really sort of the real world scenarios and the things that typically cause problems that you wanted to focus on and make sure we're able to be addressed, and I think that makes a tremendous amount of sense. One of the areas we talked about is managing revisions, configurations, engineering change management, and clearly that's an important part of a bill of material. Products, developing the bill of material the first time is a challenge, and companies struggle with that. But managing the bill of material over time, especially if you try and do it in one of these, multi-tiered spreadsheets with no automation, is just a huge challenge. And so we're definitely seeing this as an area that companies need to focus on and make sure that their solution does a good job managing change and managing multiple configurations. But Marinko, actually, Graham, let's start with you on this one. From your experience, why do companies choose PLM to manage their bill of materials? Why is that the right platform?
Yeah, I think in the first case, a lot of the bill of material information originates in the product design and product planning process. And the PLM system is just a natural system of record that those teams are working in. So the bill of material really gets assembled over some period of time. It's worked on collaboratively, by the design teams, and in fact, by the extended design teams and the supply chain. And all of that, as you said, goes on in a very collaborative way, under change control, under management, and synchronized between those teams. And I think it becomes a natural breakpoint where the product is considered complete and could be safely then handed off as a baseline to manufacturing, and then it gets handed off and put into the ERP system for execution. So I would say if they do it in the PLM system because that's the tool of choice, it's the system of record for the design process.
Yeah, it makes very good sense. Marinko, at Gentherm, you decided to use PLM for bill of material management. Can you tell us why Gentherm chose to manage bills of material in PLM? Marinko, I'm wondering if you were on mute, my friend.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Gentherm being a global company with design centers in multiple countries and manufacturing in multiple countries, you need that one source of truth for everything. But it's not just the bill of material, it's what you do with that bill of material and how you manage it and how you use it for, FEMA's down the road, simulations, CAD data exchange with suppliers. it's really that one central place that you can use to provide everything to your whole organization. And I think that's where Windchill gives us a real strong advantage, in that it really does take us to that real digital advantage where we can do that, where it's not just a BOM, it's the product. And bringing that product to fruition really is a very important thing for us, and how do we make that get through our entire organization.
And Marinko, as usual, you always say something that leads me right into my next point. You and I think along those same lines. When you talk about that one central place, one of the things that we understand about products, I mean, a product is not, it's a combination of drawings or CAD models or technical specs. There's so much more to a product, and Graham was talking about it. It even extends out to corporate IT with IoT these days. There's so much rich information that belongs to a product and needs to be managed cohesively for that one central place to find information, but also managed through through change across the way. Association of information to the bill of material is something we focused on quite a bit in the selection guide. Marinko, maybe back to you. I mean, you mentioned storing a lot of data in the BOM. Why is that important to Gentherm?
Well, one of the things that we really found is we don't want engineers to have to go looking for data. There's studies all over the place that show 30-40% of the time spent searching. We want that engineer to have at their fingertips, be it, hey, I need to see all the CAD objects, or I need to see all the specifications, or I need to see all the requirements, all this information at their fingertips. This is the most effective way. If we find a product we can reuse and slightly modify, or if we want to make sure we're meeting all these new requirements of a new customer, that everything's in that one spot for everybody to see. And that BOM structure and how you can view it is really what drives, I think, a stronger product and a more efficient organization.
And Graham, from your experience, I mean, what types of things have you seen companies including in their bills of material, and how does it go beyond engineering data into the enterprise?
Yeah, I think the bill of material is like a natural backbone. The tree, if you like, that gets decorated with, maybe that's a nice Christmas analogy. The tree that gets decorated with all of this other product information, that's usually things like, CAD models and documents, drawings, requirements or links to requirements. And then the system itself can include logic. So, that could be logic around, substitute parts, or options and variants and product families. So the thing really becomes more than just a static list of items. As Marinko said, it becomes the way in which engineers locate information, because it's all logically connected back to the parts that constitute the bill of material.
Yeah, absolutely, and even beyond, what engineers look for as we start to talk about transforming bills of material. There's so many people that need information across the business that is related to the product, and the bill of material is just a natural way to communicate that and collaborate around it. So we see the transformation of bills of material from an engineering bill of material that makes sense to a designer and an engineer being translated to something that makes more sense to manufacturing. May consolidate some items, may add in business processes or manufacturing processes, and then also to service bills of material that may have, for example, service kits and maybe even some parts kits. That process can be very problematic for companies, and we're actually fortunate to interview Mark Mitchell of Jabil during the process of building our selection guide, and what he talks about is the duplication and issues and mistakes. If you're working within different environments for these things, and I think it's just another point to think about. How spreadsheets and document-centric ways just break because you don't have the right capability to manage how all of these things are tied together. Marinko, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the importance of BOM transformation at Gentherm.
That's actually a really important topic for us. Be it right now that we only have one bill of material that we use for everything, it's not effective, and we end up driving and creating different end item part numbers for different manufacturing facilities for the same product. When we look at where we can go with M-BOMs and the variants, I can have the common design part and the multiple M-BOMs for local materials that I may use in China or Ukraine versus Mexico, or I may have a purchasing BOM, or where we have products where we have, we do design of a casted part and then we have to machine it. Well, design needs somewhere to put that data for the casted part, but the plant doesn't need that in the BOM. So we're able to really make BOMs specific to how each facility or region builds it and to the needs of what the design engineer needs versus the manufacturing, or even to what purchasing needs when they're doing a sourcing BOM. So really that ability to turn everything, but it's still the same data, just with a slightly different view, is a huge advantage that we see in allowing and having the ability to do BOM transformations.
Yeah. Graham, maybe you can talk a little bit about how associativity applies to BOM transformation.
Yeah, I'll go back to the point that Marinko made about the idea of having one item but viewed through multiple views. If you take an example of going from design to manufacturing, anybody can take a parts list from design and copy and paste and reorganize and get it into a manufacturing bill of material as a one-off exercise. But what happens when the design changes? Like, good luck trying to reconcile all the things in the manufacturing bill of material. That's error-prone and it's time-consuming, and the more changes that go through the system, the more difficult that becomes. So associativity is the idea that things are linked and intelligently linked. So that when I do create that downstream view of the engineering bill of material, the system knows how it's derived. So when there are changes happening upstream, it's like automatically spell-checked, and it's giving me the difference, and I can go in and reconcile that instantly in an error-free way.
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it. Like the spell check for bills of material. We mentioned earlier that it's not just about the product, the software. Clearly, there's a lot of very detailed things that are important to have, and solution capabilities and functionality for any software package in PLM. But there's more to it than that in terms of things to help with adoption. Maybe what I can do is turn this to Marinko again and ask, what's been the most helpful to ensure not just that you had the right software, but that you had a successful implementation and adoption at Gentherm?
I think one of the most important things there is that, really getting strong management buy-in to that question, making sure that they understand the value to it and that they communicate that to the organization, because it's the day-to-day users need to know that this tool is being supported and that we're, really trying to develop it for the benefit of the employee with support of management, because we know today what we do and tomorrow is going to change. You need to continuously update these tools. So that's a really big thing. And choosing a tool that gives us the flexibility and gives us the ability to come up with different solutions. And we're finding at the Windchill we've got some major issues that happen today all the time. We can't fix it. With Windchill, it's a simple click of a button and we're able to fix those solutions. So really finding that the long-term view is extremely important in the adoption.
Yeah. And from an implementation perspective, I think you also went with a cloud solution. Is that right?
Yes, we did. We went with the cloud solution. That way we could focus on the implementation and not setting up the hardware for months. And also the constant, hey, we're going to update this at least once a year. We're going to look at the major upgrades as well, so that way we stay on track with those types of things. The cloud allows us to do that because we're not something that we're kind of holding ourselves up with internally.
Yeah. And one of the things too, I know is you look at these package solutions today. There's so much more than just the software, but also processes and templates. And Graham, maybe you want to add some thoughts there, actually.
Yeah, I can think of three things when it comes to adoption. The first thing is we talked a lot about technology and features and functions, but I think as Marinko hinted at there, we can't forget about the people. So, in order to drive adoption, you really got to think about education. And, education is a little bit more than just training. We're not just training people how to use the system, but I think as Marinko said, reach into their kind of mindset and, help them understand that, why we're making this change. The second thing would be, start small. We've seen so many science projects that just get bogged down in quagmires of massive projects that are, a year, 2 years long. The most successful implementations I've seen of people who've made this transition are people who start small steps, like 2 or 3 month projects. And if you don't get value in that 2 or 3 months, question whether you're doing the right thing. And then third, get help. There are people that have been through this process before. So, for example, we have professional, field services teams at PTC that have been through this many times with other customers, and they can be really good, kind of trusted guide to help customers through this process.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Graham. And actually, in terms of people that have been through it before and having a guide, one of the things that I think is extremely important is choosing a partner for the long term. Managing a bill of material, there may be a number of different ways you could go about the solution, but if you think about your vendor as your partner in this digitalization journey, and the end result being a digital enterprise with digital twins and information coming back to the organization, via the Internet of Things, and then being able to push that information into an augmented reality view. There's just so much that's going forward that needs to be invested in from a software perspective, but also from just a thought leadership and understanding where the market is going. And a vendor can be a big part of that, and not just what software they offer out of the box today. It's a long-term relationship. So Marinko, maybe I can turn to you, and during your selection process, what were the types of things did you want to see in the vendor that you partnered with at Gentherm?
Well, a couple of things that for us is we one thing we want to make sure that that was CAD-centric, that we could use multiple CAD tools without driving any issues into what we were doing. We wanted to see somebody who had broader solutions. We had a tool for a very long time, and we want to now be able to be staying more on the leading edge of technology, and look for those updates and more regularly happen than today. How do we use next integrity and ALM for our software systems? How does that get integrated into Windchill? And then down the road into the IoT and AR, and we make some medical products, and the augmented reality could be so valuable there for operational and service needs of the product. Yet we need to make sure that we have the ability to do those, create the digital twin, put the literature together. These are all things that PTC has in their wheelhouse that allows us to get to that, to make a true digital twin from that actual product all the way to the person using the product in the hospital or potentially in a vehicle or wherever that may be.
Yeah, it really is a lot more than just the traditional PDM system that grew into PLM. It's an entire platform of solutions that work together, and I think that is something that companies should definitely be looking for in their partner.
Correct.
I'm going to end with just a few key takeaways here. One of the things that clearly we see in this digitalization journey is the need to transition from document and drawing-centric bills of material to a much broader, more mature and digital process, and use the bill of material as that digital backbone. But it also can get away from a lot of inefficiency and mistakes that are causing people trouble, right now, today, in their plants, in procurement, in service. But that they should also look as they're looking for the right capabilities for bill of materials, they should be looking across the enterprise. They should be looking across the life cycle for something that's going to help them communicate and collaborate information about the product up and down the value chain. And as they look for those requirements, make sure it's not about the software. It's also about adoption, and it's about implementation and support and having a vendor that you can grow with over time. And we do believe that it's time for companies to really prepare for the digital enterprise and use bill of material as a mechanism to do that, because we do see that there will be winners and losers coming up, and that the market is going to change pretty significantly in terms of who's leading, and that digitalization is going to be a big key to that. So with that, I'd just like to say, thank you to Marinko and Graham for joining me on this. I've learned a lot, and actually we have time now for some questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Kim for Q&A.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. We are going to have some time for questions, as Jim said. First question here is, what about BOMs for products with multiple configurations? Should they be one BOM or one per configuration?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think one of the things that you'll find as you start answering questions about bills of material is that there's no one answer that works for every particular company. There are different schools of thought. Some people in that situation would create a super bill of material or an overloaded BOM, 150% BOM. There's lots of different ways that could cover multiple configurations. You can then use some tools in the PLM system to define and validate a specific configuration and drive that through the model. But I think one of the things to think about with these things is find some experience, find that guide that can really help you through that. And I don't know, Graham, maybe if you've got any sort of rule of thumb or way. I know you like to talk about different solutions that are fit for purpose. Maybe this is another example of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's very scalable. But I think that the prevalent approach is that that I see amongst our customers that do products with variability is that they will build that 150% BOM, right, where really the single product structure. I'll say the product structure. I'll differentiate that from BOM in a minute. I'll say the product structure contains all possible combinations of parts that could constitute the product. And then once you've built that out, the bill of material is really a report from that. Right, so you set your selection criteria, say, well, these are the options that I'd like to see in the product. Hit the button and you generate the bill of material, the actual list of parts, the recipe for a specific configuration. So that's what I'm seeing, Jim, as the most prevalent approach.
I'd like to interject here for a second. We have a specific application where this really is important for us. We do a lot of platform design for electronics, so we're able to use a lot of the same key components, design portions, and carry it over to multiple OEMs. One of the problems we have today is because we have individual bill of materials, we don't have that overloaded one. It is a very manual process for us when we make a significant change as an improvement and getting that back to the platform concept. When we look at the configuration tools that we'll be bringing in with Windchill, we can now have that platform with an overloaded BOM and being able to get that back, that improvement or that advantage to that main platform for the next generation, the continued development. That's a very strong portion of having that kind of overloaded BOM. A little bit harder to work with, a little bit harder at first to grasp, but long term is a very good solution for that type of situation.
Yeah, I mean, if you made the investment in a platform approach and modularization up front, then it does take a little bit more effort in the bill of material, but the benefits on the downstream side are just tremendous in terms of maintenance and change, and also in terms of being able to validate designs in bulk as opposed to having to validate each individual change against each model. So, Kim, any more questions?
Yep, we do have another question here. I've heard people talk about a single BOM. Do you think it's reasonable to have a single BOM for the company?
Marinko, that reminds me a lot of your Franken-BOM, which is one of my new favorite terms.
I really wanted to answer that question. You can have one BOM that everybody uses. The dilemma that comes about is as product gets more complex, or you may reach out to more facilities and start to have local materials, then you end up having to drive so many unique things in each area to really find the proper solution. When you have that kind of, an engineering BOM and a manufacturing BOM, you may have one part that you ship with 6 different types of boxes. That allows you just to have those slight configurations and variant, but reuse all the data over and over and over again. So for us, with very simple product, a very complex product, we found that the MBOM and having the BOMs for the specific uses, but having a lot of the data associated, really gives us a significant advantage. In the past, where we're using one single BOM, we end up having to create different end items for each facility or multiple end items for the same item we're building just to handle a different box that one plant customer might need.
Yeah, and that gets extremely cumbersome to build and then to maintain over time.
Mm-hmm.
Kim?
Okay, we have another question, a little bit detailed here. It's an automotive OEM question. This person's asking, what is your recommendation on how to systematically translate the EBOM to the MBOM? And they're giving an example for context. Car body structure EBOM to manufacturing, assembly BOM by weld shop station number. EBOM is organized by section of the car by design engineer, and MBOM needs to know the different substructures coming together with the weld shop.
It's a fantastic question, and I love the word systematically, because one of the things that a proper PLM system will help is that systematic translation from engineering BOMs to bills of material or service BOMs, and then, as Graham was talking about before, maintaining that associativity. Actually, Graham, for that specific example, I think that might be a good one. Would you mind taking that one?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, this is a detailed question, so I might stray into a little bit of product detail in my answer, but I'll try and keep it as generic as possible. But this question really drives at the heart of the multiple bill of material question. And it's commonly described as, in engineering, we take a functional view of the product and we break it down by functions. In manufacturing, we take a process view of the product and we want to see it broken down by the sequence of assembly. And that two views of the world is exactly the reason we have the ability to transform a bill of material from one format into another. And by format, I really mean restructure. So the way that we achieve this in Windchill PLM is, you could imagine you would have a design structure on the left-hand side, you'd start out with an empty manufacturing structure on the right-hand side, and a 3D visual representation of both. And as you allocate parts from the design to manufacture, you see them kind of drag across into the manufacturing structure, and you can reorient them in the structure. And as I described before, it's all about spell checking to help you through that process. So the system is kind of alerting you to parts that have not yet been allocated, parts that are created new in the manufacturing structure, maybe a phantom assembly. So that's how we would achieve it from a technical perspective.
That's very good, Graham, and I do think that that's one of those questions. It's bills of material seem very simple at the at the highest level, and then once you start getting into them, they can the needs become very complex. And one of the things we tried to do with the buyer's guide was to try to look for the key things that companies should look for. I mean, you could come up with a requirements list that's 20,000 lists, items long, and we really tried to focus on the key things, and that's exactly one of those, is that ability to transform and restructure BOMs. So fantastic. And
I think one thing.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I think one thing with this question too, which I want to add to what Graham said. That design engineer, they know what they need to make that product work and to hit those functions. When you look at the MBOM transformation process in that left-hand, right-hand that Graham's mentioning, that really allows that manufacturing engineer who knows those sequence of operations to put it together without being limited by how the EBOM has been created by the design engineer, because they're two different worlds. And I think that's really important to keep in mind, is that they really need to have the ability to have that flexibility to do those things in the manufacturing side. And if you have one BOM, it's almost impossible to do that because trying to get a design engineer to understand every sequence of operation that goes on in a manufacturing shop floor, they're just not going to get it. So really this is, I think, something that Windchill does extremely well, and that MBOM is so critical.
Yeah, and compound that with a service BOM.
Oh yeah, that's another one, yeah.
Right, and then once you have all these downstream BOMs, the real key to making that thing productive is this idea of associativity. So we could all do the BOM transformation once, but then these changes that happen in design and making sure that they get accurately flushed into all the downstream bills of material. That's the real secret sauce, if you like, of a bill of material system.
Good. Kim, back to you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to have to wrap up the webinar right there. Thank you to our presenters and for spending some time with us today. And thank you to all of our audience members for being part of this webinar event. Take care, and we'll talk with you soon.